Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Carlton People. Today we are going to meet Dieter. Well, I've met Dieter before, but you're all going to meet him. Hello, mate. How you doing?
G'day, Terry. I'm well, thanks. Hey, thanks for having me on. What a fantastic segment you've had over the journey. Just sort of meeting lots of different Carlton folks of different ages and demographics. So really pleased that you've got me on. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure to have you here. I think the more people we can meet through this series, the closer we get to understanding what is the essence of the Carlton Football Club. So there's a underlying mission behind every episode.
Yeah, there's always a mission there, but look, I've got some theories that we'll share later on as to what sort of makes us tick. But again, they're just theories from someone who's been involved for a little while. So looking forward to it, mate.
Yeah. Well, let's start from your beginning. So, how did you become a Carlton supporter?
Yeah, there is a family link, as there often is, but there was a little skip in this family link. So my grandpa, born in sort of the early 1900s, mad Carlton guy, mad, loved it. Would go along, as a young man, sort of in that 1910s onwards, around 1915, before the war. His dad before him, a Carlton man. So you're looking at the 1880s. So when you sort of follow it back, the club was founded in 1864. So it's a sort of a longish link, but through no football or player link, just as fans, just as supporters. And Grandpa was so big on it. He took me to a Carlton game, a practice game in 1981 at Princes Park. And I just remember it was hot. We played the Hawks and we got absolutely hammered, 10 goals plus. Dreadful. And I turned to old Grandpa and I said, "Oh, mate, it could be in for a bit of a long season here." He said, "Don't worry about that." He said, "We don't win practice matches, son. We tend to win premierships." And I thought, wow, that's pretty bold. Okay. We'd won one in 79. And as true as it was, Terry didn't win a practice game in 81. We won a flag. Didn't win a practice game in 82. We won the flag. And I thought, wow, what a club. And where the skip was that my dad, German immigrant, hence my name, German name, but a German immigrant came to Australia in the 50s and lived in St Kilda with his German mates. And St Kilda played just down the road at the Junction Oval from where they would go to the pub. And so they would walk along and have a look at this very odd game called Aussie Rules, the VFL, when they're very much used to the round ball football. And Germany very good at the round ball football over the journey. They're like, what the hell is this sort of game? And St Kilda wore black, white and red, which was the colours and still is the colours of the German kings and royalty in Germany. The German flag is black, red, gold. But the actual colours historically of the German royalty is the St Kilda colours. So they were all Sainters and got to see 66, which was good for them. But, mate, when I was growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, St Kilda were appalling. So Grandpa got me a Carlton jumper, mate, and I was hooked. Hooked.
Just like that. Well, I mean, it was a great introduction.
Yeah. Amazing introduction. We were a brilliant team. 79, 80, 81, 80. Look, 1980, who would have thought, mate, you win the flag, 79. Alex Jesaulenko, probably in the top, 5 players of all time, you could argue, at Carlton and the VFL. He leaves the club after a board stoush with the then president, George Harris. That ticket lost. Jez is out to St Kilda. I mean, imagine that happening now, that your coach gets the flick the year after, not even the year after, in the off-season, you win a flag. So 1980, we unsurprisingly didn't make the grand final. And then 81, 82, we won them. David Parkin still says today that should be a four-peat right there. That should have been a four-peat, which had only been done once before by, sadly, Collingwood. But he said that was a real four-peat side. But that tumult in between, makes it pretty difficult, which is why stability, and you talk about this a lot now, stability is important in a club. Yeah. Really is. And I think we've got that now, gladly.
Yeah. So you're I would say you're a Carlton golden child, born in the golden
Yeah,
era.
yeah, yep.
Um,
I would say so. So
yeah,
lucky.
yeah,
Like a couple of the folks that you've had on, I think Morris was one of them. You know, I saw in between television and at the ground 5 grand final wins by the time I was 21, and 3
right,
grand final losses too.
yeah,
So 8 pinnacle games before I was 21 years old, and half of them I was at the game. How lucky is that?
yeah.
And then since, we've been clearly nowhere near that.
What is it about those 5 premiership sides that you look at and you find similarities in? Like, what were the hallmarks of
Mm,
those winning teams?
it's a great question, mate. I think everybody's got their version of what Carlton football's like for them. But when I try and even explain it to my 11-year-old son now, what I think is Carlton football, there's a few elements that were there through all of those. I think the first element is, and an underrated one, we were so tough. So tough. Those sides were very strong physically in the match. So without the ball, our tackles really stuck.
Mm-hmm.
With the ball, we were very powerful. We had skill. We had great, skillful players on every line. We had pace. So if I see Carlton football today, and probably the only really reference point is the second half of last year, 2023, where we sort of won 10 out of 11 or something along that line. We were strong in the contest. We had more skill in our delivery into the forward line and linking around the ground. And when you win the ball and you're on a roll, you've got pace, you're quick. You're sort of like a step in front of the opposition. You're going in with more danger than what the opposition are. And I think those tenets still ring true today, but certainly the 80s teams, the 95 was just a cracker, but those 80s teams, they were tough, they were skillful, and they were quick. The game changed. Premiership quarter was third quarter. It was a real thing. It wasn't just a term. Often at halftime, you'd feel that we were a bit unders, and we'd come out and just literally turn it on. It was remarkable because they were that good. They were good enough to do it. These guys didn't even train full-time either. They were, part-time trainers and probably had full-time jobs too. So
Wow.
remarkable. But yeah, they were the tenets, mate, that make Carlton football what I remember. And I reckon we're starting to see that again.
Well, as you said, I actually had goosebumps as you said it. The first word you said was powerful. And I think I remember when Vossi first was announced as coach of the club, and they said, "Well, what do you want? What are you going to bring to this club?" And he's like, "We want to be a powerful team." And yeah, you start to see pressure, contest, get repeated over and over, and the rest will sort of trickle from that. It's like this attitude change of doing it the hard way has come back. Because from my understanding, Carlton Football Club was a blue collar club,
Yeah.
hardworking, honest club that did it the hard way. And I'm starting.
It's a funny reference.
Yeah.
We did do it the hard way. And it's a funny reference because traditionally Carlton and North Carlton and the Parkville area was very much working class, single terrace cottages where workers lived. But we transformed over time and we became known 70s, 80s, 90s, the Silvertails, because we had incredible links to business, the business world. And to be fair, we ran our business at Carlton better than the rest. If you think of, George Harris, Ian Rice, and then John Elliott, for all the foibles you can look at, we were class leading on the pitch and we were class leading off the pitch because we ran it like a business when no one else was anywhere near that. And that meant scouring the country for the best players. There was no draft, no salary caps. You could just go and get your job done, but we just did it better than most. So we were certainly working class. Then we were seen as sort of the Silvertails, but we were always tough right through. And that was the hallmark. And I think this current generation, and I reckon it's 2 generations since 2002, we've been pretty average by any measure you want.
Yeah.
And it hurts me, but we have been. If anyone had seen Michael Voss and how he went about his business, I don't think going in hard's going to be a problem for us, because the bloke telling you to do it did it for so long. And he was among the finest captains of premiership teams you could find. And I think he's really teaching us how to go about it. If you're not tough, I reckon, Terry, you don't win the big games. Got to be tough.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, you know, every year, every season will come along and there'll be the new theme. And I think at the start of the year, this year with 2024, we're looking at the word speed on the ball, and that's great. But I mean, in my experience watching the game, when it's all said and done, when it all boils down to the final 4 teams and then grand final day, it's not the quickest team. It is literally the team that is better at the contest that wins more often than not.
Yeah, so true. And if you look at the difficult times that we had from 2002 till really the second half of last year, we had a good run in 2022, but we came 9th. But for an unlucky finish and all of that still kills us. But maybe it was good for us at some point. We were just so bad in all facets of the game. But one of the things that really struck me as a fan watching it was how easily we were knocked off the football. And when we were chasing the football, our tackles just didn't seem to impact the contest enough.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing now is a team that used to be laughed at for 2 decades. We were laughed at. And in many ways, fair enough. A lot of people were cashing in chips after a long time of getting flogged by us. But we're now a team that other supporters, you can tell, they tell you, they don't want to play us as easily now.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got Carlton this week. Oh, mate, I've been waiting for that. And I know our fans have been waiting for that, especially the younger boys and girls and men and women who just haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Because when that comes back, and you got that expectation, you just want to get to the ground and you just want to watch it wherever you are in Australia or around the world. You just want to watch it because we're demanding that you watch it because we're getting better.
Yeah.
And when you see that toughness now, we're hitting tackles and it's dislodging the ball and it hurts the opposition. That's where you need to be. And it's so good to see it. It's so good. It just fills your heart, mate, after so long of not seeing it. Not because we weren't trying. We just actually weren't that good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I grew up in an era where it was I was told the story of what Carlton was and how great it was, and we waited so long to see it. I think we're starting to see it, as you said. And I just think of all the 10-goal beltings that I was sitting through, knowing, and well, really not knowing, hoping that it'll be worth it. And I feel like we've only just started scratching the surface of what the actual potential of it is. And then, to sort of see this added element of the energy in the crowd. And then you've got this whole digital wave of Carlton, fandom. These elements are seemingly starting to come together, and it really feels like we're starting to build the next wave of identity of the club.
Absolutely. And I think it's time. I love our history. I love it. I always read about it, experience, luckily, some of it just as a fan. But we've got to write a new chapter, mate. And I think that time really is now. I mean, you were saying you're watching 10-goal beltings. I don't know, which games they were, because I reckon 10 goals lost was a good result back then. I went 80, 90, 100, 120. I think we lost to Hawthorn by 140 or something. I mean, talk about an idea. But interestingly, as that time went on, we went as mates in the crowd, and we went for the social 2 hours or even 3 hours or whatever to and from the game. It didn't become about the result, because clearly that more often than not wasn't really that palatable. But you're just sitting there with your mates for a few hours, which in the end of it, as the years go, that's what it's about, the community, the Carlton community.
Yeah.
You got your mates there and the people, you've seen those faces for so long, many of them. And we're starting to see some new faces, some kids, boys and girls in particular, wearing the Carlton jumper and colours with some pride.
Yeah.
They want to. And it really means something. I could say anything to the players. I could say, just don't underestimate how important you are in people's lives when you go well and when you don't. Because really, people do really care that much. It impacts them. I know it impacts me.
Yeah.
Particularly after such a long drought. But we're really seeing it come back, and it's starting to come together, and the noise that we're starting to make, I think we can make more. But in my 37 years as a member, I can genuinely say we're now a lot better than where we were, and I'm loving expectation of top four.
Yeah.
I love it. I'd much rather that than an expectation of another wooden spoon, Terry. You know,
True.
People might say, "Oh, well, don't talk them up too much," or the club might say, "Oh, temper." I say, "No, embrace it, mate. Be a good club. If someone thinks you should make the top four and play off in a prelim for a grand final spot, do it. Don't worry about it. Do it." So yeah, we are that good actually, and we're going to prove it. But long way to go.
Long way to go. Yeah. You mentioned grand finals. I'm sure that they are important memories etched in your story. What are some other core memories that spring to mind? Or like a random story? There's always that random story that you've got from an experience that you had. Do you have any of those over your journey?
Yeah. There's a couple. Probably the biggest storyline as a kid was how proud you were of being a Carlton fan. It was just so enjoyable, and a few other people have said it on your Carlton People series, Terry. People just didn't like you for being a Carlton fan. They didn't like you as a person. It wasn't personal, but we really were disliked because we were that good.
Yeah.
And you don't want to sound arrogant about that, but that really was the reason. And the memories of those big games against Collingwood, big games against Richmond, big games against Essendon, those fan groups sort of generally don't like each other much. Again, not as people, just team association. Because between us, Collingwood, Carlton, Essendon, 16 each, Richmond 12 or 13 or something like that. We have won and lost grand finals against each other many times and denied each other silverware many times, often when the other one was favourite, by the way, too. That's why there's the dislike, because we were relevant, really relevant. So that was their memories, that those games were huge, often decided by a goal or less, because the teams competing were just that good, high level. I used to watch Peter Dacos play. I loved the Macedonian Marvel, except that he played for them. But what he could do with a footy, and some of these guys, were just part-time players back in the day, mate. They didn't have strength conditioning coaches and dietitians and full-time, footy jobs. They were part-time players. So the early memories of just being so proud to have the jumper and pulling it on all the time at school and being involved in the big games. And really later on, sort of the memories are just around some of those, I guess, the key wins. And it's been spoken about a lot, the 99 prelim and things like that. But in the years where we'd only won 1 or 2 games and 3 games, shocking years, just getting that odd victory, coming back against Essendon by 48 points thanks to Fev. Those sorts of things you just never forget. I think you talk about Fev hitting the post against Hawthorn. How could we lose that game? How did we lose that game? How?
I know.
Mate, we found ways to lose like no one else could find ways to lose. But they're also part of the memory mix, because life doesn't always go your way, mate, does it?
That's true.
But now we're looking at 29 years almost, mate, between flags. Only St Kilda's worse than that.
Yeah.
And Fremantle have the same, but they were a newer club, of course, but they're the same.
I just had a thought as you were explaining the players back in the day who were part-time players.
Yeah.
Do you think because they were part-time players that had full-time jobs that they played with, more passion and purpose back then? Because, back then it wasn't seen as a full-time profession.
No.
And therefore you played because you actually wanted to be there. Whereas now, you're on a pretty good wicket. You can pretty much get on by for 4 or 5 years if you're good enough to get drafted. And for some of them, they will say it's just a job. Do you think that has a part to play in why there was such a passion?
You'd have to think so, mate. Otherwise, why would you have done it? It's a brutal game. And it's a brutal game when you're a full-time professional, as they are today, with all of the technology and support you get physically and mentally in the game. Whereas back then, it was very much about the club, the jumper, and the fans. And I think now we're starting to see the club understand, probably more than ever, the critical nature of the fans, how important members and supporters are in this whole thing, and how they actually become one and the same. Because at the end of the day, no fans, no footy.
Yeah.
As much as they might sort of say otherwise, there's not a market if there's no fans. And our fans are like, they really are like no other. They really are.
What is it? What is the essence of the Carlton Football Club, and what is the spirit? Because there's something, it's not tangible, but there's something there.
Oh, it's there. Like if you were sitting in that Melbourne final and the thing's shaking, it was an unexpected win. We were probably underdogs going in. You know, we hung around pretty much all night. We were in front for a fair bit of the game. But then that siren goes and that joint shook. It did. You could feel it in your seat, and we were up a level or so. You could feel it shaking. The screaming, the noise. That's not common in AFL football. It's probably more common in round ball football and soccer in Europe and South America and UK. And it's not that common in our game. Not many clubs fans can do that. Remember, that was a Melbourne home game in essence too, by the way, because they had ended further up the ladder. So from a fan perspective, we like literally rocked the joint. And you've got to ask yourself, what is that? Part of that, I think, was 20 years of frustration coming out. Massive relief in a tight game at a semi like that. But I think our fans are more passionate than others because there's some ethnicity through our fan base and diversity through our fan base, again, that I don't think a lot of other clubs can offer. Right? If you got, and I'm just going to go off the ones that I remember from growing up and seeing even now at the ground, Terry, you got Italians, Greeks, Lebanese, Turkish fans. We've got a strong Jewish fan base right across the Balkans, Maltese. I mean, that's not even getting to the Anglo-Saxons yet. Yeah, if you just some of those groups, right, and cultures, one thing that's right through all of those, they're very passionate cultures, right? Yeah. And, I haven't maybe hit half of them, but just they're ones that come to mind. One thing they don't lack is serious passion and buy-in to their sport and their club and their team. And we've got all them in spades. We've got large portions of lots of different cultures in our fan base. And when you bring them together and it's on, there, I think, is some of the DNA of what our group is and why we're passionate like we're passionate. Because you can just say passion and what does that mean? I think it's the cultures that make us up all going for the one thing. And then when things are close and tight or we're going well and the lid's off, it just comes out. Like it's crazy. But it's so good crazy. Yeah. It's so good crazy.
Yeah, it's such a good way to explain it. I mean, my early 20s, I realized I was really into it. And then sort of late 20s when I was, living outside of Australia and just missing the footy, and then just kind of realizing like, I can travel the world and see all these awesome things, but there is nothing that comes close to like a game at the G with 70, 80,000. Nothing that I've watched, experienced yet comes close to it.
No. It's mad that our local is 100,000 all-seater Coliseum called the Melbourne Cricket Ground. That's our local.
Yep.
And look, I think most Carlton fans would say they would prefer to play at the Melbourne Cricket Ground more often than, say, Marvel. That's just my read. That ground at the G just has so much heaving noise, and it's just such a beautiful spectacle on that ground. 100,000 folks. It might be half yours, half the Oppo. We're pretty lucky, mate. We're very lucky. I love Princes Park, and I still wish we played home games against maybe the GWS and the Frios and the Gold Coast of this world. I suspect that's not on the agenda, but I loved our home ground. That's where our soul is. Yeah. But at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
We're so lucky. Get there even a bit early just to keep sucking it in.
Yeah, you just smell the air.
Mate, there's 365 days a year. How many games in Melbourne do we play? 15 maybe? I haven't checked the fixture, but call it. There's 15 occasions only where we play in Melbourne, and some of us might be lucky and go interstate or something, but out of 365 days, mate, there's just 15 occasions where we play at home. You want to be up for that. You want to be up for game day. That's why it's just so good. And now we're sort of doing better. Amazing.
Magical. How have you watched the evolution of the game from the way we consume it? We've gone from every game play Saturday 2 p.m., radio coverage only, wide world of sport, and now all of a sudden you can watch every game, and then away from the game you can access content about the game and your team. Like, how have you watched that evolution?
Yeah. Well, I think we just do it now on our terms, don't we? We've got so many options.
Yeah.
I think some of your viewers might laugh, and they would have lived the same thing. We grew up on a mix on TV. It was Seven's Big League, where you'd have, the match of the round at Waverley, or what was then VFL Park. Might be us, might not. They might have a couple of highlights from elsewhere. And then on Channel 2, you had a show called The Winners, which was sort of the rest of it. So the stuff that Channel 7 sort of didn't want to cover, Channel 2 picked up with Drew Morford and Tim Lane and stuff. So you had a bit of Saturday afternoon, or Saturday night, 6:30 was Seven's Big League, and then you had The Winners on a Sunday morning on the ABC. And then you were waiting for the newspapers or footy magazines that would come out once a week that are old the minute they're printed. But you'd still be dining off it on the Friday, waiting for the next Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m, Terry. 6 games, VFL.
Wow.
Just bang, 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 bang. And then, so, how have I viewed the evolution? Well, now we can consume at our leisure as we wish. So you got our game, we try and go to our games where possible. But, we can all look at replays, analysis at a touch of a button, various platforms. You can stream stuff, so you can sort of just call it up and go from scratch. You don't have to wait for a time for it to come on. And then there's something like Blue Abroad, mate. And I said off air before we came on, but you've done an amazing job with this platform, and I know there's more to go. And by the way, thank you for that BA pin, mate. I've got it right there. What you and the team have created there. You got content, you got characters, but you got a community now. We've got a real community going here, and stuff like this. It's just a pleasure because we can analyse things. It's sort of a Carlton platform. Now, I take my hat off to you, mate. You've done a brilliant job, and you're also really measured. So I think that's really important for the channel, because if we all just want to blow our stack and, lose our chops or whatever, we can go on some sort of blog and, watch all that, and you might want to input a few sort of expletives. But that's not, I think, what people really are after in the main.
Yeah. Just
a little bit of analysis about why we went well or where we didn't. And some measured commentary and a bit of fun. And I think that's something that Blue Abroad does brilliantly with all the characters. You can pick any sorts of show or people. So it's really amazing how we consume now, anytime, anywhere, any device, and content channels like this, fan-related content channels all over the world have grown.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a much more fun environment to be in than just going mainstream all the time. Mainstream will have its place. Will always have its place. Is it as dominant today? No, because the numbers tell you so, and the number of people watching and involving themselves in channels like this, mate, growing and growing all the time. So hats off to you and all the other folks out there who put Carlton content out, and other clubs too, to be fair, putting out their content. They're doing a ripping job.
No, thank you. It's the community aspect is one of the big. I mean, this has all been one big learning experience. I don't think we're done. I don't think we'll ever be done. But the Carlton community aspect, and just through conversations I've had about how it used to be, the Princess Park community, it's starting to feel like we've cultivated that online. And I mean, I've met you through this platform. The ability to connect with people, initially online, but then in real time, and then start forging those seeds of relationships. That's the magic for me.
We used to do that just walking to the ground, right? I reckon you bang on. I hadn't thought of it that way before, Terry, but you sort of helped create the Carlton community that used to exist around North Carlton. And that was in the pubs of North Carlton. It was in the ice cream shops with the kids in North Carlton. It was the experience of trying to find a park in an outrageously difficult place to find a park up College Crescent and into Princess Park. It was walking through those magnificent gardens of Princess Park itself, leading to the ground, the noises, the smells, the conversations, mate, the anticipation through those grounds. I do miss that a bit, I've got to say.
Yeah.
To the G and back's pretty good. That's sort of always been the case, but I still do miss that North Carlton feeling. I think some Premier League clubs have still managed, biggest league in the world, still managed to build up that original home ground. I know some have moved, but there's still a number of old school suburban grounds that host EPL now. And the to and from in that environment, I mean, it just looks insane. I'm a bit jealous of that. But times change, mate, and venues change, and hopefully we get 100,000 members plus. We're really on the march now, mate. The final sort of touches is about getting it done on match day, on big occasions, to give yourself a chance at a grand final, and then hopefully then get the chocolates. Because that's our core business at the end of the day, mate. That's what we're here to do. Men's program, women's program, VFL program. That's what we do it for.
What is missing in the context of the layers needed to win a flag? Is it experience? Is it just a little bit of good luck mixed with experience? Are there certain players that you think we might need to develop a little bit more? Like what's the missing spice?
Good question, mate. If you had the answer to that, you'd probably be in a job on a list management role.
Yeah.
You'd be. I try and think I'm a pretty reasonable supporter. I know when we're poor. I acknowledge when we're poor. I also feel like I'm fair and reasonable when we're better. I think we're pretty close, Terry. Let's bar major injuries, because they're going to happen, and we are missing some talent with ACLs and longer term injuries. That's going to happen, and you need luck. You do need luck. So there's one element, even Collingwood last year, the way they had those players return, key players, the Moores, the Nick Dacosses and so on. You've got to have your best players available at the important time of the season, the back half and into finals. So luck, hopefully be good management with the players, good strength and conditioning management, and all that is really critical, but there is luck sometimes in a clash and someone does an ACL. I didn't think Doc did an ACL.
Yeah.
I just didn't think, he sort of was tapping it down, and suddenly that's another one for that guy's just, so much. I didn't see Sauce going down with an ACL either. I didn't see, sort of Walshy not appearing for, a number of weeks now. And we knew Weeders, but 8 weeks is a long calf injury too. You need luck. I still wonder whether I don't know if it's just something we've got to learn, but I think our inside 50s still need more polish. When I look at games now, I think we've got enough in that squad to be playing on the last game in September or the first week of October, depending on what the fixture does. I really do. We've got 2 Coleman medalists, outside of Geelong, and they had to, buy heavy to get Cameron in. We've got 2 organically grown, drafted Coleman medalists. You're kidding, really. We've got a guy in the ruck who he's now showing Tommy TDK. Pito's a good, strong ruckman, but I think what TDK could do with his athleticism, unbelievable. You got Weeders down back, and then there's the Crippers and the Walsh and the Chera and the Sard and the Williams. I reckon it's there. I think we need to be more brutal inside 50, Terry. I mean clinical.
Yeah.
Every time we stream in, we hit that 15, 20-metre pass. I think the clubs that really ice you on big matches are ones that just complete forward of centre. They look up, and we still go a bit long and high for me at times. And I'm not a football expert. I'm not a game day expert. I just watch, and I think, where could we get better? Once the defence is set, when Weeders is back and we're sort of controlling, I think we're okay there. I think our middle's good. I think our forwards can be amazing. But the delivery, I still think we chop it up inside 50 a bit too much for my liking to be at the pinnacle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, recently the great Geelong teams, the Hawthorn teams, the great ones, they just had this ability that when they were going inside 50, the game's so fast and it's so hard to have composure, and it's easy to say it when you're sitting down like this. But the great ones had that ability to be composed, to lower the eyes. I mean, sometimes you've got to kick the ball long because you want to get territory and you want to lock it inside 50 and you want to do all these things. But it just feels like once we can turn the page in that polish, as you said, or the composure going inside 50, I fear what we could do to teams.
I don't think we've seen this team really mash up an opponent just yet.
Yeah.
And I mean mash up, 80, 90, triple figures. And it's coming. The reason I think it's coming is that we can score now so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There was such a long time, Terry. Remember, we couldn't even score 100 points, mate.
Yeah.
It was like some sort of drought. Oh, they can't score 100 points. They haven't scored 100 points for years. It's because we were no good, mate. We were no good. But we are now at a point where we can put stuff on the scoreboard. I mean, that Brisbane game against high-quality opponent.
Yeah.
They're not dead in the water. No way. Don't write them off. Or Collingwood, for that matter. Not yet. High-quality opponent. Early in that third quarter, we put them to the sword on the scoreboard too. Bang, 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 bang in that third quarter, and we reeled in that 42 or 46 or whatever it was point deficit super quickly. I'm waiting for when we've got the game on our terms for, say, 3 quarters, maybe 3.5, who knows, a 4-quarter effort, which is hard in the modern game because you get momentum switches. You get momentum switches. But I'm thinking we're about to mash somebody up. Now, I don't know if it's North or this week or whatever, but when we were no good, the good teams belted us physically, mentally, and on the scoreboard. They bullied us, they harassed us, pushed us over. I think we're now getting to a point where we're going to start to do that and get some strong wins with strong percentage, which is what a top 4 team and a top 2 team needs to do. Mm-hmm. I reckon we're close, barring injury. And we're only a few games in, mate. We haven't hit our gears yet. I don't think we have. I think there's a lot more in the way we link up from the centre and from the back line to the forward line. And we've got a kick straighter, Terry. I think those 2 things go hand in hand. Better entries.
Yes.
And kicking straighter. Like these set shots and stuff, and even some of those snaps that are gettable, really start nailing that, because the good sides consistently go sort of 11-3, then they're 14-6, and then, we kick a lot of points. We do. But I think it's coming, mate. I think it's coming, and I do hope that for all those boys and girls and young men and women in particular who stuck out that rubbish, in many ways, it was just so hard to look at. But we stuck fat, mate. We were there. Members were there, but we just weren't very good. They were there. Could you imagine another team that would have 80,000 members when you come 13th? Come on.
I think you win 2 games in 2018 and your membership increases by 15% or 10%. Like,
we're either all not quite right.
Yeah.
Or that's where the passion is, because we're also super committed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're now ready for, I hope, the next 3 to 5 years we contend strongly. That's where I think we are. I honestly think that.
Yeah.
But we've got to go out and do it.
That's right. The time is
it's
now.
not. There's no way it's just going to happen. But I think we're good enough to contend with the list profile for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. I've got a little something here that you handed to me. I want you to talk me through this. So for those watching, so this is a 1949 membership. Is that right?
It is. Yeah.
This is one of the coolest pieces of memorabilia I think I have. So unique.
How cool is that thing?
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I'm like, we live in this digital world, and like, you know, you can scan your entry and all of that stuff, and that's all fun. But this is really unique.
It's one of those things that it's sort of leather bound, right? It's leather bound, and it's got the full fixture, you know, versus South Melbourne at the Lakeside Oval, versus St Kilda at the Junction Oval.
Yeah.
I'm big on the history of the place, mate, because you've got to know. Look, you even went to a couple of games in 1949, Terry. Look at that. Round 1, you were there. Round 8, you were there. And look, it's got the board and the president's name and the committee's name, and you got to. I think you've got to really know your history to know where you want to go.
Yeah.
I love our history, but I know it's really over time to write that new chapter. And I can't wait till the revolution comes, to be honest, because I think we're that close to doing some really nice things in the men's program. But nothing comes for nothing, mate.
Yeah.
You got to earn it. There's a lot of digital stuff and all that, but at the end of the day, right, it's hard footy, clearances, tackling pressure that sets you up to kick a winning score. I don't reckon that'll ever change. 1949, 1864, when we were founded, 2024. Some things in footy, I don't think change that much. People they can rocket science it, over science it. A lot of data, a lot of stats. Get your bloody hands dirty, win the hard nut, get it out, use it well inside the 50 and kick straight on the goal. You're going to be hard to beat, mate.
Yeah. I find the harder you are as a football team, the more the game rewards you in a magic way, in an inexplicable way.
Yeah. It served Sydney pretty well over the last 20 years. Now, they'll talk about the Swans culture and this and that, and they may well have that. But every time you play Sydney, it's just one that I sort of reel off in my head. You know you're in for some bruises. And even when they were really poor in the 90s, they were as bad, if not worse than us for a bit there. They were tough. And you know, they're led by Paul Kelly, a very, very tough Brownlow medalist and super captain of the club. They were tough. I think we're getting that way now, and we have to be, because that's your hallmark. You know, when someone's coming at you, you tackle, you make that thing stick.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing that so much better now than we have. You know, players are getting older and, you know, they're more experienced in that, but there's something in willingness to do it.
Indeed.
I'm going to stop that guy coming at me. I'm going to stop him ball and all too. And the crowd will reward me too. The crowd will reward me for that.
I love it.
That's where the joy is in being a fan, right?
Absolutely. Well, mate, before I let you go, I need to ask the main final question. And that is, which year do you think the group will be lifting up the next Premiership Cup? Do you dare to dream?
Sweet 17. Let's go bold, mate. Let's do it this year.
Why not?
And the reason I say do it this year, and hopefully a few times in the next 3 to 5 years. At this point, I can comfortably, honestly say there is not one team that I fear today when we go head to head anywhere in Australia.
Yep.
I haven't been able to say that for 23 years, but
So
right now
true.
where we sit, Terry, there's not one game that I don't think, honestly, we can win today. Let's hope our blokes think that way too. I think they do.
2024. Well, I
Why
hope
not?
so, because all of a sudden this episode becomes a lot more special in the archives.
Just, mate, I really appreciate you having me on and sort of go back a little bit in history and think about where we want to be in the future. But I just keep coming back. It's all about the fans at the end of the day, the members and supporters, and just seeing how good it is for them for their whole week, their whole off season, even when we perform well. If I had any advice to a player, just really understand that connection between what you do for a job and those 2 hours in particular on match day, those 2 hours, 23 times a year or, without finals. They're so important to so many people around Australia and around the world who just are so into it. Never forget that. And I reckon you'd never not go hard again. And we're going pretty hard at the moment, which is nice to see.
Well, mate, thank you for your friendship. It's been really cool to meet you. I really appreciate you reaching out and just connecting. And I've learned a lot about the club than you would know through you, just through the conversations that we've had. And this is a very important piece that I will keep with me in the studio. And so, I just want to extend that gratitude to you and your family, and look forward to seeing what the journey is ahead of us.
Yeah, really looking forward to it, mate. Thanks again, and a huge shout to all the viewers and the listeners on the various platforms that you have, because at the end of the day, they make that community, this community, what it is. And hats off to you, mate. Doing a great job, mate. Keep growing, and can't wait to see the next installments that you've got for us.
Thank you, mate. Go Blues.
Go Baggers. See you soon.